It begins with a sound, soft, almost uncertain, a whisper between traders, a sermon from a distant chapel, a page turned in an old book, and then the world changes. English. Today, it's the passport to opportunity, the voice of global business, the rhythm of pop songs, and the quiet language in the background of flight announcements, tech manuals, and science labs. But this wasn't always true. This episode is not just about words. It's about power. It's about people. It's about stories that carried English across empires into hearts and across oceans. This is the story of how English, a messy, inconsistent, stubborn language, became the bridge between strangers. The language of movies, meetings, and memes. It's a story of history, but it's also a story of the present and the future, of how we got here and where we might go next. So take a breath. Let's begin at the beginning. Long before Hollywood, before the British Empire, even before England was England. Let's go back to the island, the origins, from Germanic tribes to Shakespearean language with no name. Long ago, there was no English. There were no English speakers. Just tribes. Germanic tribes, sailing from what is now northern Germany, Denmark, and the Netherlands. They came with axes, with families, with fear in their eyes and courage in their bones. They didn't call themselves English. They called themselves Angles, Saxons, and Jutes. In the 5th century, they crossed the cold sea and landed on a foggy green island the Romans had abandoned. The Celts were there. So was the wind. And slowly a new voice began to form. Not a language yet. Just sounds. Grunts, commands, short words for bread, war, and gods. It was the beginning, Old English. It looked nothing like what we speak today. It sounded harsh, full of consonants and thunder, but it was ours, or rather, it was theirs, the language of warriors and farmers, the foundation stone. Centuries passed. The 8th and 9th centuries brought new sails to the horizon. Vikings. They didn't come to stay, not at first. They came to take, to raid, to burn, but eventually, to settle. They brought Norse, another, Germanic language, and Norse mixed with Old English. Words began to shift. Sky came from Norse. So did egg, knife, take, they, and them. English started changing, fast. 2 languages began to dance, and the grammar got simpler. You see, when different people speak together, they often simplify to survive. Suddenly, word endings dropped. Sentence structure got looser. English was learning to adapt, to bend, and that made it strong. The Norman invasion, a French. Crown on an English tongue. A date carved into the bones of British history. William the Conqueror crossed the Channel from Normandy, France, and changed everything. He won the crown of England. But he also brought a new language, Old Norman French. The English peasants stayed English, but the kings, lords, and lawyers, they spoke French. For 300 years, English hid in the shadows. It became the language of the poor, of farmers, of cooks and blacksmiths. French ruled the court, French ruled the law, French ruled the fashion, but English survived, and slowly it absorbed. Words like crown, court, judge, beauty, mirror, dance, and nation all came from French. Thousands of words entered the English bloodstream. But here's the twist. English didn't disappear. It grew stronger. In the dark, like roots under the soil, it waited until the time was right. The rebirth. Chaucer and the People's Voice by the 1300s, English began to return. Stronger, heavier, full of new words, but still raw. Geoffrey Chaucer wrote The Canterbury Tales, a huge moment. He didn't write in French. He wrote in English. It was rough, uneven, but full of life. The people heard themselves in his stories. They laughed. They listened. They remembered. English was rising. It was no longer just for the kitchen or the barn. It was heading toward the throne. Then came a machine that changed the world, the printing press. In 1476, William Caxton brought the press to England. Suddenly, books weren't just for monks and nobles. Ideas could fly. Stories could spread, but there was a problem. Spelling. There were no rules. Book might be spelled boke, or book, or even book. So Caxton had to choose. He picked spellings. He picked grammar. And what he printed became standard. A frozen version of English was born, even as people kept speaking it differently. The printing press created something new. National English. Written. Shareable. Powerful. Shakespeare and the Golden Explosion. And then came a man who played with words like a musician plays with notes. William Shakespeare. Born in 1564. By the time he wrote, English had become richer than ever. He had French, Norse, Latin, and Old English words at his fingertips. He invented phrases we still use today. Break the ice, heart of gold, wild goose chase. It's Greek to me. In a pickle. Shakespeare didn't just reflect English. He stretched it, molded it, expanded it like a balloon full of meaning, and his words flew across England, across Europe, and later across oceans. Because as Shakespeare wrote, England was building ships, and those ships carried English with them. A language ready to travel by the 1600s, English was no longer the humble language of villagers. It was a tool of poets, of sailors, of kings and colonists. It had been pushed, pulled, and transformed. It had survived conquest, plague, and revolution. It had absorbed enemies, adopted strangers, and made them part of its story. Now, it was ready to leave the island, to circle the globe, to become the language of the world. A flag in the wind, the sea has always been more than water. It's a road, a battlefield, a promise. By the 1600s, English ships began to chase the horizon. They carried explorers. They carried soldiers. They carried dreams and guns, but most importantly, they carried language. The English language was no longer confined to the fields of England. Now it was crossing oceans, not as a guest, but as a conqueror. Seeds of Empire. In 1607, the first permanent English settlement was planted in the New World. Jamestown, Virginia. The soil was rough. The winters were brutal. The native peoples already lived there, with their own languages, their own wisdom, their own names for every tree and river. But English settlers named things again. They gave rivers new names, towns new names, and eventually, people new names. English didn't just describe the world, it began to rename it. This was the quiet power of empire. And it was only beginning. Colonies and commerce. By the 1700s, England had become Great Britain, and the empire was growing. Canada, the Caribbean, Australia, parts of Africa, India, and more. Each colony was different. But one thing spread everywhere: the English language. Sometimes it was taught. Sometimes it was forced. Sometimes it was absorbed by trade and necessity. But it came. It entered schools. It entered courts. It entered people's lives. Sometimes as opportunity, sometimes as oppression. The painful duality here is the truth. English spread through beauty and brutality. Missionaries taught English to spread religion. Merchants used English to strike deals. Governments used English to write laws. But behind the grammar books were chains. Behind the lessons were guns. Indigenous languages were silenced. Children were punished for speaking their mother tongues. In Canada, in Australia, in Africa, stories were lost because English didn't just arrive, it replaced. That is the heavy shadow behind its rise. It's a story of glory and grief. India, the jewel and the paradox. Let's pause on one nation. India, a country with hundreds of languages, rich in literature, science, philosophy, and poetry, long before the British came. When Britain colonized India, English was introduced first to elites, to bureaucrats, to translators. But over time, it spread further. By the 1830s, Thomas Macaulay gave a speech calling for the creation of a class of persons, Indian in blood and color, but English in tastes, in opinions, in morals, and in intellect. That sentence shaped generations. English became the key to jobs, to status, to advancement. It opened doors and while closing others, even after independence. In 1947, India kept English, not because of love, but because of need. It became a neutral bridge across regions, a second tongue, but a powerful one. Today, India is one of the largest English-speaking countries in the world. But the relationship remains complicated. English gave voice, but it also took some away. Africa, many tongues, one administration. In Africa, English arrived through trade and then through chains. The transatlantic slave trade marked one of the darkest chapters in human history. Millions taken, cultures shattered, languages lost. But the 19th century brought another layer: colonization. Britain controlled parts of Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana, Uganda, and more. English became the language of administration, the language of power. Schools were set up. Children were taught in English, even as their native languages were ignored or banned. But here's what's remarkable. Africa didn't just receive English. It reshaped it. Today, Nigerian English has its own flavor. Kenyan English carries Swahili rhythm. South African English has echoes of Afrikaans and Zulu. New accents, new expressions, new life. English spread across Africa, but it was never just copied. It was claimed. Australia, a new land, an old silence. In 1788, the British began settling Australia. They called it a colony. But to the Aboriginal peoples, it was home, and had been for tens of thousands of years. English came fast. Laws, roads, prisons, punishments. More than 250 Aboriginal languages once existed. Many are now endangered or extinct. English replaced them in schools, in government, in daily life. And yet, resilience remains. Today, many Aboriginal communities are reclaiming their languages while also using English to tell their stories. The past cannot be changed, but the future can be written in many tongues. The Caribbean, Creole, code, and culture. In the Caribbean, English arrived through plantations, through sugar, through slavery. Enslaved Africans were forced to work in brutal conditions, stripped of names, families, and languages. To survive, they created new ways to speak. They combined English with West African languages and created Creoles. Creole English is not broken. It's brilliant. It's proof of survival, of resistance, of rhythm. Today, Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados all speak English, but with music in their voices and history in their grammar. From Bob Marley to calypso lyrics, the Caribbean gave English new sound, and Soul America, a rebellion that kept the language. Now we turn west to the United States. In 1776, the American colonies broke away from Britain. A war of independence, a new nation. But guess what stayed? The language. English. Though Americans dropped the U from color and turned lift into elevator, the core remained. And America grew. Fast, big, loud. Immigrants came from every corner of the world, speaking Italian, German, Spanish, Chinese, but schools taught English. Jobs needed English, and eventually it became the common thread. Today, the United States is the loudest amplifier of English on earth, and not just through schools or books, but through something far more powerful: media. The ocean carries more than water. By the 1900s, English was spoken on every continent, not because it was the best language, not because it was the easiest, but because it traveled with power, with armies, with business, with empire. Some people chose it, others were given no choice, but wherever it landed, English changed, and was changed in return. From the beaches of Fiji to the towns of Ghana, from the skyscrapers of Singapore to the farms of New Zealand, English was no longer just British, it was global. The empire shrinks. The language stays. After World War II, the British Empire declined. One by one, countries gained independence. Flags changed, laws changed, but English stayed. Why? Because it was already rooted in schools, in systems, in hearts. It became the second language of progress, of science, of higher education. Even in countries that resented colonization, English remained, not because of love, but because it had become useful. That usefulness is what turned English from an imperial tool into a global key. The digital age begins at first. Computers only spoke numbers, cold, mechanical, ones and zeros. But to connect people, computers needed a voice, and that voice became English, not by law, not by force, but by momentum. English was already used in science, already common in business, and when the internet was born, it followed the same path. The first websites in the early 1990s, when websites were new, almost all were in English. Why? Because many of the internet's creators were from English-speaking countries. The first online documents, forums, and guides, all written in English. Soon, if you wanted to search, you searched in English. If you wanted to send an email, you typed it in English. Even today, many programming languages use English words like if, else, print. While this made English the natural base of the online world, emails, software, and browsers before social media, there were emails, business emails, personal emails, marketing emails. Almost all of them were written in English. Even software programs like Microsoft Word, Excel, and Windows were in English first and translated later. Web browsers like Netscape, Internet Explorer, and Chrome were launched in English, their settings, their menus, their help guides. For millions of new users, using the Internet meant learning English. Even if it was just a little English as the default language, think about setting up a phone today. The very first question is often, choose your language. And what's at the top of the list? English. Not because it's the most beautiful, not because it's the easiest, but because it's the most widely used. This idea of a default language matters. When websites and devices default to English, people start accepting it as normal. And what's normal becomes powerful. Social media and global connection. Then came Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, platforms that connected billions. And while they now support many languages, most hashtags, captions, and comments still use English. Why? Because it reaches more people. Post in your local language and only locals see it. Post in English, and the world sees it. This is why influencers in Brazil, Thailand, Nigeria, and Germany often write in English. It's the bridge, even if it's not perfect. Even if it's mixed with other languages, it connects. Work goes global today. You can work for a company in another country without ever leaving home. A designer in India works with a client in Canada. A virtual assistant in the Philippines supports a business in the UK. A software team in Vietnam builds an app for users in the US. What do they all use to talk? English. English is now the language of remote work, of global teams, of cross-border success. And it's not just in tech. From customer service to accounting, from marketing to medicine, English is everywhere. Freelancing and English freelancers. On platforms like Upwork, Fiverr, and Freelancer write their profiles in English, not always because they want to, but because clients expect it. Jobs get more views. Offers come faster. Payments are higher. English becomes a skill, like using a tool. It's no longer just a subject in school. It's a career advantage. Online learning and English. Think of the biggest online learning platforms. Coursera, Udemy, Khan Academy, Duolingo, YouTube. Most of the top courses taught in English. Even when subtitles are available, the original is often English. This means that people learning computer science in Turkey, or psychology in Kenya, or business in Peru are doing it in English. Knowledge is becoming global, and English is often the key. Global brands speak English. When companies go international, they face a question. What language do we use? More. And more, the answer is English. Even if a brand is born in Korea or France, their websites, ads, and product labels often include English. It looks modern, it feels global, and it opens more markets, from shampoo bottles to sneakers, from electronics to energy drinks. English is the silent language of global marketing. Globalization and the shared market globalization means goods and services move across borders easily. And behind every deal? Communication. A supplier in China talks to a buyer in Brazil, an exporter. In South Africa talks to a warehouse in Singapore. Even when neither party speaks English natively, they use it anyway, not because it's perfect, but because it works. English is now the shared space in global trade, a common tool like currency. English in science and medicine. In the world of science, English is dominant. Most major journals publish in English. Conferences use English. Research collaborations across borders use English. Medical students in Eastern Europe read English textbooks. Doctors in Asia write case reports in English. Researchers in Africa submit studies to English-speaking peer review panels. Why? Because English reaches more people and science wants to be heard. Aviation, maritime, and emergency services. Some global industries don't just prefer English, they require it. Aviation, pilots and air traffic controllers use English around the world. It's the law. To avoid confusion, in the sky. Maritime. English is used on international ships, from cargo to cruise liners. Emergency response. Disaster teams from different countries coordinate in English during earthquakes, floods, or health crises. In these cases, English isn't a choice. It's a safety measure. Why English works online. Here's why English became the internet language. Simple alphabet, just 26 letters. No accents or tones. Flexible grammar. People can speak it imperfectly and still be understood. Massive. Content. Videos, articles, courses, tools in English. Early tech dominance. US led the first wave of digital growth. Network effect. The more people use it, the more others need it too. This combination made English unstoppable in the digital age. Not without criticism, but not everyone agrees this is good. Some say English crowds out other languages, that it creates pressure to give up native identity, that it makes people feel less than if they don't speak well. There's truth in that. Language is power, and power must be used with care. The goal is not to replace local languages, but to offer a shared one, to connect, not erase. English today. Adaptable, not perfect English is messy. It has strange spelling, weird rules, many exceptions, but it adapts. It bends to culture. It absorbs slang. It evolves, and that's why it works. From emails to emojis, from hashtags to headlines, from mobile apps to remote jobs, English fits. It's not the oldest, it's not the purest, but it's the most widely shared. Why English won, simplicity or strategy? A question. People often ask, why English? Why not Spanish, or Arabic, or Mandarin? These languages have millions of speakers, rich histories, great literature. So what made English win the world? Was it smart design or just lucky timing? In this part, we'll explore the reasons and discover why English became the world's common voice. Reason number 1, history and timing. English didn't win by accident. It followed power. First the British Empire, then the American century. When ships ruled the oceans, English was on the sails. When movies ruled the screens, English was in the script. When the internet ruled the world, English was in the code. Timing mattered. English was in the right place. Again and again. Reason, number 2, flexibility. English is like clay. It changes shape. It borrows words easily from Latin, manual, labor, animal, from French, ballet, cafe, garage, from Hindi, shampoo, bungalow, pajamas, from Arabic, algebra, coffee, zero. It doesn't try to stay pure. It mixes, it adapts. That makes it easier to use and easier to make your own. Reason number 3, simple alphabet. The English alphabet is small. Only 26 letters, no accents, no extra marks. Compare that to other scripts. Chinese uses thousands of characters. Arabic connects letters in different ways. Russian uses a different alphabet altogether. English looks simple, and for beginners, that makes it less scary. Even if pronunciation is hard, typing and reading start fast. That helped English spread online and offline. Reason, number 4. Basic grammar at beginner level. English grammar has many confusing parts, but its basic structure is simple. For example, I eat, you eat, we eat, they eat. Only with he or she do we say eats. No masculine, feminine nouns. No noun cases. No complicated verb endings for each subject. This helps learners speak quickly. Even if they make small mistakes, in English, you can be understood. Even if your grammar isn't perfect, that's powerful. Reason number 5, media. Power English dominates global media. Think about blockbuster movies, hit TV shows, pop music, tech tutorials, motivational videos, TED Talks. Even in countries where people don't speak English fluently, they still consume English content. Subtitles help. So does repetition. But the real key? Interest. People want to understand, so they learn. That motivation builds. Momentum. Reason number 6, work and education. Want to work in tourism, in aviation, in tech, in science? English helps. Want to study abroad? Most programs require English tests like TOEFL or IELTS. English became the gatekeeper. The skill employers list. First, the requirement universities won't remove. That creates a system where learning English feels like survival, or at least opportunity. Reason number 7, the network effect. This one is huge. The more people speak a language, the more valuable it becomes. Let's say you live in Thailand and speak Thai. Your friend speaks Swahili. You don't understand each other, but if you both speak English, you can connect. This shared second language is what made English global. Even if it's nobody's native tongue, it becomes the language in the middle. The more people use it, the more people need to use it. It's a cycle, and once it starts, it grows fast. But is English really easy? Let's be honest. No language is truly easy. English has strange spelling rules. Though, through, cough, bow, irregular verbs, go, went, eat, ate, weird idioms, break a leg, hit the sack, once in a blue moon pronunciation can be tricky. Phrasal verbs can be confusing. Articles, AI, the, are hard for many learners. So no, English isn't always easy, but it's learnable, it's everywhere, and it rewards effort. That's what matters more than ease. English is not better, it's just more useful. Some people believe English is superior. It's not. Every language has beauty, Every language has power, but English became useful, and that usefulness created demand. English is not perfect, it's not pure, but it is practical. That practicality turned it into a global tool. English is a borrower, not a bully. One reason English adapted well is that it didn't fight other languages. It borrowed. It said, I like your word, I'll take it. I like your food, I'll name it in your way. I like your story, I'll repeat it with my spelling. English became a collector, and that made it rich. That made it open. People could add their culture to English and still feel seen. That makes it feel like a language you can own, even if you're not from an English-speaking country. The role of pop culture. Another reason English is fun. Movie quotes, song lyrics, memes, game dialogue, YouTube creators, Instagram captions. People use English not just for school or work, but for joy. That changes how it feels. When a language is connected to pleasure, learning becomes lighter. That's why even kids who hate grammar still learn new words through music. It's the language of choice. Here's the real secret. Most people choose to learn English, even when it's hard, even when it's not perfect, even when their country has its own language. Because English opens doors. That choice is what gives English power. Not just history, not just strategy, but people. Choosing it again and again. A language. For the future, English is not finished. It's still growing, still changing. It's shaped by internet slang, Gen Z, TikTok, migrants, teachers, and tourists. It's not one thing anymore. It's American, British, Indian, Nigerian, Singapore, Filipino globalite. Belongs to everyone now, and that makes it more than a language. It makes it a connection. Real lives changed by English. Global voices behind the language. Real people. English is not just a system of grammar. It's not just words on a page or voices on a screen. English is people, their stories, their struggles, their victories. Let's leave the history for a moment and enter the lives of real people, from cities to villages, from schools to factories. This is how English changes lives, one person at a time. Story 1. The Girl with the Radio, Kenya. In a quiet village in Kenya, a young girl listened to the radio every evening. She didn't understand much at first. The words were fast. The jokes were confusing, but she listened anyway. One day, she heard a children's story in English. The voice was gentle. The words were simpler, and she understood. Every night, she listened again. She started repeating words out loud. She learned sentence by sentence. Years later, she became a teacher, and now she tells her students, "You don't need a classroom to learn. You need curiosity and a voice that believes in you." Story 2. The Factory Worker with Big Dreams, Vietnam. In the noisy corners of a shoe factory near Ho Chi Minh City, a young man worked long hours, glue, heat, sweat. During his lunch breaks, he pulled out an old phone. On it, a free English app. He practiced 5 words a day, not because anyone told him to, but because he had a dream to work abroad. After 2 years, he saved enough to apply for a job in Singapore. His English wasn't perfect, but he could understand. He could reply. He got the job. Now he supports his family and teaches his younger brother English every night. Story 3. The taxi driver in Cairo. He didn't go to university. He never left Egypt, but he drives tourists every day. At first, it was hard. People asked questions he couldn't understand, so he kept a notebook. Every time a tourist said something new, he asked them to write it down. He practiced at night. Now he speaks simple, clear English. Enough to tell jokes, enough to give advice, enough to earn better tips. He says, "English didn't change my life. It helped me change it myself." Story 4. The online tutor from the Philippines. She had a quiet voice. She was shy, but she loved English. She studied hard in school, then trained to teach it online. Now, from a small town in the Philippines, she teaches students from Korea, Japan, and Brazil, all through video calls. She says, "English gave me a job, but more than that, it gave me confidence. It made me feel like I could speak to the world." Story 5. The refugee in Germany. He fled his country with only a backpack. No money, no documents, no plan. But he had English. Not perfect, but enough to ask for help. Enough to fill out a form. Enough to survive. When he reached Germany, he couldn't speak German, but he used English as a bridge. Now, he's learning German too. But he says English was the first light in a dark time. Story 6. The mother in India. She grew up speaking Hindi. She never used English at home. But when her daughter started school, everything changed. Homework, teacher, meetings, science projects, all in English. So the mother started learning too, late at night, with books from the market and free videos online. Now she can help her daughter study. She says, "I don't want to be perfect. I just want to be present." Story 7. The farmer's son in Brazil. He didn't have internet, but his school had one English class per week. His teacher told him, "If you learn English, you can go anywhere." He believed her. He practiced every day. He wrote English words in the sand. He read out loud to the cows in the field. Now he's studying agriculture at a university. His textbooks are in English. He says, "I still have a lot to learn, but English took me further than I thought I could go." Story 8. The grandmother in Poland. She never needed English. She worked her whole life in a bakery. She raised kids. She watched TV in Polish. But when her grandson moved to Canada, she wanted to talk to him. So at age 68, she started learning English, one word at a time. Now they video chat once a week. And even though her grammar isn't perfect, her love is clear. She says, "I'm not too old to love, so I'm not too old to learn." Story 9. The nurse in Thailand hospitals are busy places. And when tourists come in, confused, sick, scared, communication matters. This nurse didn't grow up speaking English, but she took evening classes. Now she can explain medicine, calm a crying child, answer urgent questions. She says, English helps me care for more people. It's part of my uniform now. Story 10. The rapper in Nigeria, he speaks 3 local languages, but when he writes lyrics, he uses English. Not because he has to, but because he wants his voice to be heard beyond borders. His music blends street slang with English hooks. It goes viral. It travels. He says, "English is my speaker. My soul is the song." Why these stories matter. These people didn't wait for perfect grammar or expensive classes or someone to tell them it was okay. They started small, with radios, phones, notebooks, songs, smiles, and English grew with them. Each one used English not to erase their identity, but to expand it. They added it like a new tool in a toolkit, like a new key on a keychain. You don't need to be fluent to be free. You don't need to speak like a native to change your life. You just need to speak enough to take the next step. 1. Email. 1 message, 1 conversation. English doesn't promise a perfect life, but it can help you build a bigger one. You are not alone. If you're learning English now, you're part of something huge. Millions of people, different backgrounds, different dreams, same goal, to understand and be understood. Your journey matters. Your effort is seen. Your voice, even with mistakes, is powerful. The power and controversy of a global language. A language that connects and divides English is everywhere. It connects countries. It powers the internet. It opens jobs, books, and borders. But behind this power lies tension. Because every language that rises raises questions. Is it fair? Is it equal? Is it just? In this part, we explore the beauty and the burden of English as a global language. The beauty of a shared voice first. The good English has made the world smaller. It allows a doctor in Japan to read research from Canada, a gamer in Brazil to play with friends in Sweden, a student in Nepal to take a course from a professor in the US. It makes travel easier. It makes communication faster. It makes business possible across borders. In a world that often feels divided, English can be a bridge. It's a shared voice, a common ground, a tool for understanding. But not without cost now, the hard truth. The rise of English often comes at the loss of something else. When English enters a classroom, sometimes a local language leaves. When English becomes the main requirement for a job, people without it are left behind. In many countries, parents push their kids to study English, even if it causes stress. Some schools stop teaching in native languages. Some cultures begin to fade from daily use, and some people feel ashamed for not knowing English well. That's the cost of global power. It's not always equal. The pressure to perform English can bring opportunity, but it can also bring pressure. Many people feel judged for their accent, for their grammar, for their mistakes. Even advanced learners sometimes say, "My English isn't good enough. People won't take me seriously. I'm afraid to speak." This fear creates silence, and silence creates distance. But here's the truth. You don't need to be perfect to be powerful. You don't need to sound like a native to be understood. Your effort speaks louder than your accent. Native speaker. Privilege in global settings. Native English speakers often have an advantage. They speak without thinking. They don't need subtitles. They are seen as natural, but this can create imbalance. People who speak two or more languages, who try so hard to use English, may be seen as less capable. That's not fair, because being fluent doesn't always mean being smarter. And struggling with English doesn't mean you lack ideas. This bias is real, and it must be challenged. Cultural domination. English carries culture. When we watch movies in English, read books in English, listen to songs in English, we're not just learning a language. We're absorbing values, humor, history, and habits. That can be beautiful. But it can also be overpowering. If English becomes the only language we use for information, we risk losing local stories, local wisdom, local voices. Diversity matters, not just in language, but in thought. English should connect us, not erase us. Who owns English? This is an important question. Some people believe English belongs to the UK, or to the US, or to native speakers only, but that's not true anymore. Today, over 80% of English users are non-native speakers. They teach it, they shape it, they expand it. So who owns English? Everyone who uses it, everyone who grows with it, everyone who adds their voice to it. English is no longer one accent, one style, or one country. It's a global voice with many sounds. The danger of one language. Some experts warn, if the world relies too much on one language, we may lose other ones. And when a language dies, it's not just words we lose. It's songs, poems, recipes, stories, memories. English should not replace other languages. It should exist with them. Multilingualism is a gift. Knowing English is powerful, but knowing your own language is identity. We can have both. We should protect both. Education gaps in. Some countries' schools focus heavily on English, at the cost of local education. Children may grow up knowing grammar rules in English, but not the history of their own people. They may write essays in English, but struggle to read poetry in their mother tongue. This creates a divide between urban and rural, rich and poor, global and local. English must not be used to measure intelligence or worth. It should be a tool, not a wall. Voices lost in translation. When the world relies on English, some voices get louder, others fade away. Think about a global conference. Most speakers use English, but what about those who don't? Their ideas might go unheard. Their thoughts might go unspoken. Translation helps, but it's not perfect. Sometimes the soul of a message is lost when it switches language. That's the quiet cost of a global voice. And yet, the hope remains. Even with its challenges, English offers something rare, a chance to connect, to speak across continents, to learn from each other, to collaborate, create, and care. It's not a perfect language, but it has become a shared one, and we can use it responsibly, with respect, with awareness, with heart. Rewriting the future. The story of English is still being written. We can choose how it grows. We can encourage education in many languages, make space for local voices, teach English with love, not fear, celebrate accents instead of hiding them, use English to unite, not divide. The language itself doesn't control us. How we use it does. You are part of the story. Every learner, every speaker, every teacher. You shape English, just by using it. You decide what words matter, what stories spread, what values carry forward. You don't need permission. You don't need perfection. You are part of this global conversation, and your voice matters, a language still moving. The story of English didn't end with empires, or with Hollywood, or with the internet. It's still moving, still shifting, still being rewritten, by you, by me, by everyone who uses it. English is no longer one voice. It's a chorus. And the question now is not just, how did English become the language of the world? But what will we do with it next? New voices? New rules in the past? Rules were set by grammar books, by native speakers, by standard English. But now, English is global, and that means change. We see African proverbs mixed with business English Thai YouTubers, adding English captions, Spanish-speaking singers blending both languages in pop songs, Indian, professionals using Hinglish in tech meetings. There is no single English anymore. There is global English, casual English, creative English, real English. The rules are expanding, and that's okay, because communication, not perfection, is the real goal. Technology will shape the future, with artificial intelligence, machine translation, and voice recognition. Language learning is changing. Apps help you practice speaking. Smartphones correct your writing. Subtitles appear instantly on videos. One day you may speak your native language, and a device will instantly translate it into English, or any language. But even with perfect translation, people will still want to learn English. Why? Because it's not just about words, it's about connection. It's about showing effort, respect, curiosity. Technology helps, but heart is what makes communication meaningful. English and local languages. Together, not against. The future doesn't need to be a fight between English and local languages. You can learn English and keep your mother tongue strong. You can speak English at work and tell bedtime stories in your native language. You can write reports in English and poems in your own words. Multilingual people are powerful. They see the world in more than one way, and in the future, that ability will be priceless. A language of choice today, many people choose English, not because they're forced, but because they want access to ideas, to information, to friends across borders, to education, to possibility. That's the power of choice. And when choice drives language, growth becomes natural. English as a tool for good. Imagine using English to share your story with the world. Defend your rights, explain your culture, teach your passion, build your dream. That's possible, because English can do more than describe things. It can transform things, but only if it's used with care, not as a weapon, not as a wall, but as a window. To see, to listen, to build bridges. The new teachers. The next generation of English teachers won't all come from London or Los Angeles. They'll come from Lagos, from Jakarta, from São Paulo, from Hanoi. They'll speak with local rhythm, with lived wisdom, with real stories. And they'll say, English is not foreign, it's familiar. It belongs to you too. These teachers will change how English is seen. They'll make it more human, more honest, more homegrown. The power of accent. Your accent is not a mistake. It's a map. It shows where you've been, what you've learned, who you are. Don't hide it. Don't erase it. Speak with pride. Speak with strength. The future of English is full of accents, and every one of them adds music to the language. English became the language of the world, not through one moment, but many. It began with tribes, grew through trade, spread through empire, transformed through music, movies, and technology. It rose with pain, with power, with promise. And now, it belongs to everyone. To the quiet student practicing in the dark, to the mother learning late, at night, to the worker with dreams, to the refugee with courage, to the creator with a message, to you. What will you do with English? You have a choice. You can use English to grow, share, learn, teach, empower others, build a better life. It doesn't matter how fluent you are. It matters that you try, that you speak, that you connect. Because in the end, English is not just grammar. It's not just rules. It's not just phrases in a book. It's you. Every time you speak, write, listen, or learn, you become part of its story. The language of the world, and beyond English, was once a local tongue. Now it's global, but maybe, someday, it won't. Just be Earth's common language. It could be humanity's language to the stars. The first words spoken on another planet? They might be in English, or in a mix of many. But until then, English will keep moving, through your voice, through your journey, through your dreams. This was the story of how English became the language of the world. It's not a perfect story. It's not a finished one, but it's a powerful one. And now you are part of it. Keep learning, keep sharing, keep speaking. Your English matters, because your voice matters.